With that, the anatomical equipment, the brain, to enhance that awareness. So that one can see as one goes on until you start coming to leopards, which crawl. You know, they have to be trained to do some of these things. Most carnivores do not know genetically how to hunt. In fact, when they often catch game while they're still young, cubs or whatever you like, they play with it, and then they get bored and they leave it. They have to be taught by their mothers in most cases to actually kill and to eat. So they are capable of learning. But the point that I'm getting at is that if you watch them, they behave with a wiliness, part of which is genetic. Watch a cat. It's an amazing animal. Pull a string along and have the cat crawl up on the string. It uses strategy. It's engaged in using strategy. It isn't like a stupid dog that jumps on you all over the place, knocks you over. You know, I have nothing against dogs. Dogs do their own things. They pull sleds magnificently. But I'm fascinated by cats. They really fascinate me. I don't own a cat. I never did. But I'm fascinated in watching them using strategy. And you know, they have to learn these things. Not all of it, but most of it. They have to learn these things. And you're now beginning to see intelligence. So from that amoeba, which is busy preserving itself, you can, if you're perceptive enough, draw a line in which subjectivity is gradually enlarged. Do I make sense? Elaborated, differentiated, until it begins to move toward a measure of consciousness. And with that measure of consciousness, a measure of intelligence. And this can be shown to have emerged one out of the other, in which the more advanced form, advanced not in the sense of a hierarchy or anything like that, but advanced in terms of complexity, advanced in terms of subjectivity, advanced in terms of consciousness, advanced in terms of intelligence, can be seen to have emerged out of a previously less advanced form, even containing the whole anatomical apparatus and many of the behavioral attributes of the less advanced form. So what you see is a development that is not simply a substitution of one paradigm by another. To use Kuhnian, many of you familiar with good old Kuhn and the structure of scientific revolutions? You know, one paradigm replaces another. On the contrary, what you see is an unfolding over species and over genera and over families of life forms. And we're talking of ever broader categories in the binomial nomenclature of Linnaeus, okay? You can see an ever greater awareness emerging. And that awareness, by the way, reaching the point of intelligence, rudimentary intelligence, is a survival mechanism. If you went no further than Darwin's natural selection, it would be a survival mechanism. You would have to say, in a certain sense, that there is a drive toward that, if only to try to survive, if only to improve, and if only for a species to improve its opportunity to live more successfully, more effectively, more efficiently. Am I being crazy? Am I being wild? Am I being nutty? Now let's take it a step further. This is a dialectic. In matter itself, and certainly in the most elementary life forms which mark an entirely new excrescence, life as such, out of non-life, the organic out of the, like a bubble up here, where before there was nothing but placid water, suddenly something emerges and takes on a dynamic of its own, an internal dynamic of its own. So that in that water, there may have been the potentiality for that bubble to suddenly appear, called life. One would have to examine the configuration of that water to see how that bubble appeared. We can do that. We can say, what is it in the inorganic world that itself underwent evolution to finally lead to protoplasm, with, for example, the development of amino acids, from amino acids to proteins, none of which are in themselves living forms. They may be organic because we know that they lead to living forms. But proteins alone are not life forms. And certainly amino acids, of which proteins are made up of, are not life forms. They are complex carbon and hydrogen compounds, hence the word organic. Okay. Now, we finally reach a point where we have life forms through the process of natural selection, through the advantage of greater subjectivity, that are not only more conscious, but more intelligent, but that now begin to alter their relationship to the environment in a very special way. Now that special way is the distinction between adaptation on the one side and creation on the other side. All life forms, as soon as they become reasonably advanced, and they don't even have to be very reasonably advanced, you might even say this is true of an amoeba, although an amoeba operates within a drop of water. Okay, there is its habitat, right? A drop of water. Or a spoonful of water, if you want something larger, a whole cosmos for the amoeba. Okay. But now consider animals like predators that have learned and go through a learning process, a tradition, as it were, handed on from an older generation to a younger generation on how to function in the world. Picking it up, something no amoeba can do. Consider that it now such a line of evolution, and I'm now speaking of a line of evolution, am I not? I'm talking of the development of subjectivity into consciousness, into intelligence, 3 stages, goes beyond what marks all the life forms that have existed. All the life forms that have existed are adaptive. The environment that they live in is given to them. I'm not saying given to them by a deity, it's given to them by circumstances. It could be geological upheavals, it could be asteroids coming in, who knows, you pick whatever you like. It could be glaciation, it could be the transformation of a desert into an ocean. You know, these things have happened over millions and millions of years. We know that everything that exists over here is going to be very, very different in 10 million years from now. But what they have done consistently is improve their capacity to adapt. That is to say, as circumstances have changed, either as a result of natural selection or as a result of greater subjectivity, consciousness, and intelligence, they have adapted more successfully than other species. But their main function has been adaptive. They have accommodated themselves utilizing whatever genetic developments that have occurred in their species or in their genus and so on and so forth. Whatever genetic developments that have occurred, they have learned how to accommodate themselves to changes. If they don't accommodate themselves to changes, if they become overly specialized, they're dead ducks, literally. That means a minor change in their environment, however successful they are in that environment, however successful, they may be brilliantly successful, far more successful than some scrawny little rat-like mammal, these enormous dinosaurs, if you wish. Boy, real powerhouses. But they are suitable adaptively to only a limited niche, or niche. You can decide how you want to pronounce the word. I like the niche because it gives me a snap. It wakes me up. However, there's an internal logic in everything that I've been discussing. What would be the next great advance in subjectivity, in consciousness, in intelligence, beyond mere adaptation? Now, many animals do change their environment to a certain degree. The lower down you get, the less they are likely to change their environment. But the higher up you get, some may bed themselves down, like a dog walks around, and you think that the dog is going crazy right on your living room, but actually what it is doing is responding to a genetic impulse to bed down grass so it will be comfortable when it lies down. There's no grass there. The dog doesn't know why it's doing it, but that is a successful environmental adaptation for a dog. And long may it rain. And a cat will behave toward a string as though it's behaving toward a mouse, without differentiating between the two. And they do make changes like that. The cat will bed down the grass. The dog will bed down the grass by walking around in a circle. The cat may do other things, climb up a tree for the purposes of safety if it's small enough. And leopards, by the way, are excellent climbers. I don't know if you know that. They're excellent climbers. I wish I could climb like a leopard. They can chase after human beings, or monkeys, up to fairly high reaches until their weight exceeds a supportive branch or a trunk. They can do that, by the way. And cheetahs can run at tremendous paces, and they know just when to run fast enough because they get exhausted within 5 minutes. They have to run very quickly, 70 miles an hour before the kill, or 40 miles an hour, I'm not sure. But that's pretty damn fast. And then they get exhausted. Now, something emerges. The next step would be not simply to adapt, but to create. Now, many animals seem to be creating things. There are sea otters that are capable of picking up an oyster and cracking it open with a rock. That has to be learned, by the way. It's not genetically imprinted in them. There are chimpanzees that wet a branch with their saliva, creating a glue-like effect. They can dig these branches, push these branches into holes in anthills, and pull out ants that are sticking to their saliva. The saliva acts as a kind of glue, and lick it off and get a bite to eat. By the way, ants are very tasty. We're just prejudiced about it. Maybe one day we'll really learn to develop wonderful restaurants that produce delicious ant meals and pies. I don't know. For many people they are, by the way. But this is done in an ad hoc manner. You know what I mean? It's done sort of here, there. The stick is thrown away. It's not preserved. It may be shaped, but it's not shaped. It's not a very sophisticated operation. And one can hardly call this immensely creative. And chimpanzees do, in fact, many other things that seem very human-like. By the way, we now know that they don't know language. Get that out of your head. They really don't know language. There's a whole dispute about it, but most of the evidence indicates that the idea that they generalize their way we do with language is entirely false. Their ways of learning, they learn certain tricks that seem language-like, and they can convey feelings in a very simple manner. But the fact that a chimpanzee can indicate by rubbing its belly that it's sick is not exactly great discourse. You're not going to write philosophy with that kind of gesture. Okay? So let's not exactly get dazzled, as many people are, by the idea that a chimpanzee can go, which indicates that it's got an upset stomach and it can't eat something or do something about it. Okay? But we now